Hello and welcome to Shy Talk, an Irish history podcast. My name's Kevin Arney, and this week is yet another solo intro, so we'll fly through all the usual stuff, same as always. The only different thing to say this week is a big thank you to Barry Chandler, who had us on his show Stories and Sips last Friday night. You can go and find the episode that we did with Barry on YouTube at Stories and Sips. It was a lot of fun. I had a good time. We got fairly locked on drinking whiskey and shared some intimate secrets and swapped poetry like traditional Irish men. You can follow Barry on all social media at Stories and Sips. You can head on to Instagram, and sure, while you're there, why not follow Shy Talk History as well to see pictures of the things that we're talking about, not just an audio medium. You can look at the stuff too. A thank you to everyone who's sent us money on Buy Me a Coffee this past week, including but not limited to some guy called Nick who said, "Come on lads, who wants to be hearing more from the Troubles?" The Troubles, it's not a lot of crack in the Troubles. It's kind of hard to do a comedy about the Troubles, unlike the subject of this week's podcast, as you'll find out. But if you want a good Troubles podcast, go listen to The Troubles podcast by Oisin Feeney. It's very good. That might scratch your itch. I have a few stories I want to do about the Troubles, but we will get around to them at some stage. There were a lot of nice messages there over the week, but following the last in, first out rule, some guy called Fig just left a message there about an hour ago saying, "Pack of clowns." I don't know if is two people enough to constitute a pack? Maybe. This young man Fig is single-handedly bringing back the abuse fiver, or whatever it was I called it last time. If you want to give us abuse, send a fiver to Buy Me a Coffee, shytalkhistory at buymeacoffee.com. And if you want more for your money, if you don't feel like just throwing cash away so that you can hurl abuse at us, you can buy some merchandise over at Big Cartel, Shy Talk History at Big Cartel. You can buy our t-shirts there. The limited run of tie-dye t-shirts from Lisa are done for now. But maybe they'll be back at some stage over the summer. We might have celebratory tie-dye t-shirts for when we're all allowed outside again, and the 60s will be back, but only the good part of the 60s. And that's everything. That's all the things, all the boxes ticked. So here's this week's episode about the execution of Walter Lynch.
Old tales of lore, all in search of a glory. The history and mystery of lads, lasses and all. Discoveries and voyages, the rise and the fall. Follow me now as we go back in time. We trace the steps of Irish heritage to find. Joseph from Carlisle and Kevin and Dog guide you through the ways of Shy.
I like the idea that every season, at several times we've come up with a thing where like, this will be a new thing and we'll keep this going, we'll make it a tradition. I don't think any of them have stuck, apart from the tradition of doing a story that might not have happened every season, like our myth story.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the fact that
you said myth, I said lie.
Oh yeah, the only thing that we've managed to keep going over 5 seasons is doing a half-ass story once a season that probably never happened. So here it is, although the St. Bridget one might also count for this, but here's my story. I will say this is like an etymology story of a term. So that'll be the game. See if you can figure out like what this, what
the word etymology means.
See if you can figure out what the word etymology means. See if you can figure out what word came from this story.
Okay, let's go.
This story that almost definitely didn't happen. So like, the version of the story that I'm reading came from the Dublin Penny Journal that was written in 1833, and even they were skeptical about it. And in 1833, they believe anything. I don't even think they made this comparison, but they talk about the house where this event happened is still there, but the house says 1624 on it, and the event was supposed to happen in 1493. So already the whole thing's questionable.
But tell me this: did the Penny Journal, did it have a comment section at the end of the newspaper where it would just be full of classist abuse?
Yeah.
Do you ever go onto the journal and read their comments?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah. For Americans, the journal.ie is I was going to call it a news source, but that's giving it too much credit. I think if we...
It's a place for crackpots to hang out and give out to each other.
Yeah, and it's the best. It's like Reddit on a power trip of steroids and Red Bull and cigarettes.
Yeah, if you're going to check out the journal, don't read any of the articles. Just go straight to the comment section.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of Waterford Whispers. It's like, don't read the article, just read the headline.
Yeah. So here we go. James Lynch Fitzstephen was the mayor of Galway in 1493. At the time, it had a population of about 3,000 people. And as we talked about in the, I don't know what episode it was, but we were talking about the time Columbus visited Galway. There was a lot of trade going on between Spain and Galway at the time because it was a major port on the way to Iceland where people went to get fish, apparently.
Good fish in Iceland, in fairness.
Yes, that's why Kerry Katona goes there.
What?
Wasn't she the sponsor for like only mums shop at Iceland?
I forgot about that. Yeah, we
yeah,
don't have
that's
that.
a dated reference even now.
Also, Ireland doesn't have that store, really, does it?
No, not really. And that does seem like a time gone by. She got fired because she was photographed taking coke or something. We're like, oh, we don't want to associate our shopping centre with cocaine. I don't think anyone would mind now.
Yeah, Iceland wants to be associated with heroin, with meth.
Yeah, of course. So Columbus would have been there supposedly. No, I think he was there in 1477. So like 15, 16 years before this story started. So as the mayor, James would have travelled over and back to Spain a lot to do mayoral things. When I was writing that, I was like, yeah, obviously as the mayor, he would have spent a lot of time in Spain. But why?
Because you're the mayor. Why wouldn't? Yeah, I wouldn't. If I was the mayor of, I would just be bad at any job I ever do, to be honest. I hope my boss doesn't listen to this podcast. I'm not very good. I don't care enough.
But it kind of didn't. The first time I read it, I was like, yeah, obviously as the mayor of Galway, he'd spent a lot of time in Spain. But those trips are not short. He would have been spending months at a time.
Yeah. Fair play to him.
Yeah. With great power comes great discount trips to Spain.
When you read stories now in the past about people travelling to places, do you get jealous?
Yeah, of their ability to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I read about what happened to them when they got there and the various diseases. And yeah, I mean, pretty much every other aspect of their life sucks. I mean, they could travel to Spain, but what would you do when you get there?
You do what you want. You wouldn't be in lockdown.
Yeah, but you go and you talk to a woman and then you get arrested and trialed for sedition and sent off to war.
I'd get trialed for seduction.
You'd say that in your court case, and then they'd be like, hang him upside down. So on one of his many trips to Spain, fact-finding missions probably, he came back with the son of a rich merchant that he met in Spain by the name of Gomez. He didn't have a second name.
Oh, of course not. I assume Gomez was his second name.
Maybe. I mean, there probably wasn't that many Gomez's in Galway. It never came up.
Maybe he was just Gomez. Maybe.
So he was obviously doing a favour to this rich merchant. He brought back Gomez, showing him around, starting a proud tradition of hordes and hordes of Spanish teenagers coming to Ireland during the summer to learn the language and experience our public transport system.
Yeah, to spend 3 months down the country in Ireland just so you can have 2 days in Dublin.
I don't know. You've been out of the country for a while, I guess, but that's become a mainstay of Dublin in the summer, is just flocks of Spanish teenagers travelling in unison.
But because I would have always seen it down the country, especially where I'm from. But then they would travel all around Ireland on their weekends, but only ever go to Dublin once or twice, and it's such a waste. As soon as they would come back, they're like, "Why am I in Carlow? I should be in." Why am I in Carlow? I should be in Dublin, obviously, or London. My family has money.
We want to send you to an English-speaking country to learn English, but not properly. So here's Dublin. Young Gomez soon became friends with Walter Lynch, James Lynch's only son. They were both around 21 at the time, by which I mean I read that Walter was around 21 and I'm going to assume Gomez was as well. Walter was an admirable young lad, but like all sons of mayors, he had a disposition to libertism.
I thought you were going to say he was in the army.
No.
He was an admiral.
It was a very, in the Penny Journal, it used very flowery language, and it said that he had a disposition to liberatism, which I think translates to he was a certified scut. I looked up liberatism then, and it's where, do you remember that band, the Libertines?
Yes.
Apparently,
Pete Doherty and the boys.
Yeah. Apparently, liberatism was a movement in the 1700s for free thinking and proclivity with your penis.
Oh, nice. Like the liberation of thoughts and cocks.
Exactly. So, yeah, basically, like any rich son of a mayor, he was a man about town. But that was all changing in 1493. It seemed like young Walter was ready to settle down at the ripe old age of 21. He was courting a nice young lady called Agnes. His dad approved of the match because she was from, like a good stock family.
Oxo.
I don't know what episode we talked about it before, but like Galway is also known. There was I think it was 14 merchant families or something around the place. I assume they're both from one of these families.
The way you've said it, the way you've built that up now and said families, you have me thinking like Shakespeare. Like this is like Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, they're from two.
Like they're families, or else it's the mob, and it's like these are the families of the boroughs of New York.
Yeah, I think it was more the mob. Yeah, they're all like they want to intermarry. They want to, or it's like Game of Thrones. I guess it's just the big families. They want to intermarry and intermingle so that they can run this town. So Mayor James was happy to see his young scut settling down. He decided to throw a party in honour of his son's new love, and he invited everyone over for the prenuptial session. But at the party, young Walter thought that his fiancée Agnes was taking a little bit too much of a liking towards his new Spanish friend Gomez.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, listen, she's presumably also like, actually, I was going to say presumably 21. Realistically, in this time age, she's probably like 14. She's growing up in Galway her whole life, and all of a sudden,
that's the legal age in Spain.
Yeah, well, no, this is 1400s, Jason. The legal age in Spain was 14 weeks, I think, at that point.
Jesus Christ.
But I was going to say the Libertines would know all about that. No, it was the Lost Prophets.
Yeah. The singer from the Lost Prophets is the big pedo.
Oh yeah, but
yeah, you're thinking Pete Doherty is he likes drugs.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, he didn't sleep with a baby. He was into murdering Amy Winehouse.
That's not him. That's the her fella was it Blake something or other? I don't know. I
thought he was blamed partially at the time as well, though.
Pete Doherty, I think it's just because he was also famous and on heroin. So
yeah.
they were like, well, who else is it? They were like, it's Ronnie Wood. It's also Ronnie Wood. Sam Kinison. It says anyone who...
Yeah.
Sonny Liston.
But you know how it is. Like, this is a 14-year-old girl, probably. She spent all her life in Galway, and she's promised to this Walter Lynch, the son of the mayor. Sure, he's probably a pretty boy, but he's too soft. He's like the Orlando Bloom, and then along comes rugged Spanish Johnny Depp. And we've got a real Pirates of the Caribbean situation on our hands.
Or rugged Spanish-looking Aidan Turner.
Yes.
The pretty hobbit.
Yeah, with the love story with Evangeline Lilly. So Walter, he doesn't like this. He gets jealous. He confronts Agnes about it after the party and accuses her of infidelity, which I think at that stage means giving someone your handkerchief. Agnes is so annoyed at the charge that she doesn't dignify it with a response, and she storms off.
What if it wasn't, though? What if it wasn't just a handkerchief thing?
I think the classic didn't dignify it with a response and storms off. I think she did it.
Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you just lie. Like, you just say.
You just say no.
Or else you'd lie. Yeah, because one or the other. But you don't go, I'm not even going... Anytime anyone's ever said, I'm not going to dignify that with a response.
Yes.
They're guilty.
I just did that. Yeah. And I imagine it's one of those things. Do you ever find yourself in a situation where, like, your brain just goes blank and all it can think of is all the cliches? Like, it's not you, it's me. I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. I'm sure that came to her mind and she was like, shit, did I just say that? I look guilty as fuck.
Yeah. Well, the second that
I
you say it,
didn't kill my wife.
If you turned around and said, like, I'm not going to dignify that with a response, and as soon as I would turn to walk away, I'd be like, I'm so sorry. You know now, don't you?
Yeah. But here is my response. I will dignify it now, actually.
No, the answer is no. I didn't do that.
Yes,
it was a lie.
Well, after mature recollection, so she's definitely sleeping with Gomez. Walter's annoyed.
The next night, Walter was stalking around outside Agnes's house, keeping an eye on the place, when he sees Gomez leave the gaff.
Getting himself into a real go mess.
You don't know the half of it, Jason. Walter
I don't know
flips
any
out.
of it, Kevin. You're explaining the story to me live.
Well, no, this is half the story. We're halfway done. This is a short episode. So Walter flips the lid and he charges at Gomez, screaming. Because it's dark, Gomez didn't recognize his new friend, and he ran through the town of Galway towards the shore, away from the madman that was, screaming and running after him.
Would it be, Kevin, down towards a certain arch?
This is how the Spanish arch got its name, Jason. This is actually the etymology piece of this tale. It just used to be known as the Arch at the time, but Lynch...
There was a Portuguese fella that used to have rights to it, and then this took precedent.
That actually was part of the whole thing with Agnes. It used to be called Lynch Arch, and then this Spanish man came in, and all of a sudden it was no one cared about Walter Arch anymore. Everyone was talking about the Spanish Arch. And
he's having sex with my fiance in my arch.
No, when I said he fucked her in the arch, you might have misheard me. So Lynch chases him down.
You're meant to be the highbrow one.
So Lynch chases down his new friend. They're getting near to the sea at this point, and Lynch gets ahead of Gomez and stabs the Spaniard with a poniard. I don't know what a poniard is, but I'm guessing from context it's a type of fish.
I was going to say it's just something sharp, I assume.
It's probably a little dagger or something. Whatever it was, it killed the man. So Lynch threw his body in the sea, but because the tide was coming in, it washed back up on shore, where it was found the next day. So Lynch fled from the scene. He's hiding out in a nearby forest, consumed with guilt over what he'd done. I feel like we kind of take it for granted now. When I read that he stabbed the body and threw it in the sea, I'm like, what an idiot. It's washed up on shore. You hide the body. That's like step one of this thing. They didn't really have access to the TV that we have now. They didn't know the basics of murder.
No.
He threw it in the water. He could see the tide coming in, and he threw it in the sea, and then just left.
Yeah, but he was probably like, well, fingerprints aren't a thing yet.
Yeah, sure. He's probably like, the murder weapon, I may as well leave that here. I don't want to have that with me.
Yeah.
It was probably engraved with his name, and he just left it there.
In his heart.
Yeah. Don't take it.
It stabbed through a letter into his heart saying, teach you to see my fiancée, Mrs. Lynch.
It's just shoddy workmanship. But eventually, after a night of turmoil and grief, Lynch figured that the only release he could get was to turn himself into the law. But he'd only started making his way back to Galway, Jason, when he saw a crowd of lawmen and citizens approaching, all led by his father, the Mayor of Galway.
Lynch Sr., Mr.
Lynch Sr.
Big Daddy Lynch.
Big Daddy James Lynch Fitzstephen. Mayor James was obviously a bit put out when his son stumbles out of the forests in front of the search party and confesses to the murder of Gomez. Because Gomez was not only a friend, he was like protected by guest right, you know? Not only had a man just been murdered, this was a man who was under his protection. He'd obviously promised his dad before he left Spain, whatever
happens, I promise he won't be stabbed.
He won't be stabbed. I know you've heard all those tales about young backpackers traveling around Connemara. Listen, man, not on my watch.
Let's see, his dad was awful worried they were going to take a weekend sojourn down to Limerick, and they were like, no, you're going to stay in Galway in the sanctitude and safety of Galway.
Yeah. But beyond just being upset that, and his son's a murderer, I suppose, that's not great. No one wants that in their conscience. But the real kicker was that
he kicked him after he stabbed him.
He kicked and stabbed him. Mayor James was the chief magistrate of Galway, which meant that it was his job to dole out the punishment. He was the only one who had say over life and death of his citizens.
So when you say that, though, it makes me, I have a feeling I know where this is going to go. He has the power to be like, I can let my son off then.
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
Well, for a moment, his fatherly instincts get in the way of his duty, and he's considering leniency from his son. This was his boy, his flesh and blood. But then he thought, nah, feck it, and ordered his arrest.
Okay, that's shite. Like, I know my dad protect me, he would. He definitely would.
Well, but it's a tough call. I think from reading it, like, it's the...
You had a story a few weeks ago about a whole town getting together and to do a police cover-up.
Yeah,
and this
that's
fella's
true.
like, there's one guy, he has no relations over here, nobody knows or cares about him.
Yes.
No, my son's going to go to jail for this.
I think it was the guest right that really, or like the protection of the guest that really pushed it over the edge. If it had just been any old citizen, he would have been like, listen, everyone gets one.
But this guy's like, he's got diplomatic immunity. He's kind of like,
yes,
it's like Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, it's exactly like Lethal Weapon. So he puts his son in chains. The procession starts moving back towards the prison. The crowd's in shock. People are murmuring, people are chatting. They're talking about the magistrate's conduct in arresting his own son, and they're lamenting the loss of a fine man. Everyone was fond of Walter. He was, as we said, a man about town. As they get closer to the prison, they were met by Walter's distraught mother, Blake, his sisters, and his fiancée, Agnes, who were all pretty upset. Understandably annoyed. The trial was held a few days later, with Mayor James presiding over the case of his son, Walter. I don't know why they couldn't get someone else to do it. Like, surely that's a conflict of interest. You could get someone to step in for a day.
You'd think so, but also the conflict of interest problem goes out the window when the person who's brought him in for the charge is the dad as well.
Yeah, I suppose.
It's like, you can't be like, I don't know if I can trust you to prosecute him fairly. Well, I am the one who insisted on him being brought up for this charge, so...
He also seems like he confessed to it in front of everyone in the town, so I don't really know, has he got a leg to stand on? In the process of the trial, it comes up that Gomez was only at Agnes's house that night because her father had invited him over for some business, which is... I don't believe it.
Risky business.
Yeah, exactly. Monkey business. That was the only sort of business that was happening in that house.
Now, tell me this. So that's her dad invited him over.
That was her story anyway.
Just ask the dad.
That might have been his story too.
Because it was the truth.
Well, it was either that or like, he was over riding my daughter. Which would have been frowned upon at the time.
Maybe. But, I don't know. He's the son of the mayor of... No, is he the king of Spain?
No, he's not the mayor or the king of Spain. He's just like the son of a well-to-do
lord,
merchant.
like a fancy Spanish man.
Yeah, whatever they had over there. He was the equivalent of the mayor of Galway, but for Barcelona.
Yeah, that's who I want my daughter seeing. Like,
yeah.
If I'm going to give her away, because I already have my Galway home, I want a beachside, like, villa or something. That just makes sense.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, we said at the start of this, I was saying, like, the 14 families wanted to intermingle. What use is that? Your daughter marries the son of the mayor of Galway. Best case scenario, she becomes the mayoress of Galway someday. He marries some Gomez guy from Spain. You've got a holiday home in Fungarola. Or weekend trips to Mallorca.
You just see him on the side and you become Gomez's Guma.
There you go. So, for any of those reasons above, he says that he invited him over to visit that night. Possibly a lie, maybe the truth. So even though Walter had confessed to the crime at the start, at some point during the trial, he regrets confessing and he decides that actually he wants to live. He backtracks a little bit. And the people of Galway, it doesn't really describe their relationship with him. They really like him for some reason. I don't know why. Like, he's a 21-year-old kid. The only thing that's really been described about him so far is that he's a bit of a lush. He's a bit of a libertine. Maybe he's going around banging all the terrorists of the town and they're fond of him. I'm not sure, but for whatever reason, a lot of the people turn against the magistrate, turn against Mayor James and start demanding that he free his son. I think
a funny sentence in itself.
Yeah. But I think a lot of it's been pushed on by his mother as well, who's like, he's my boy. Please don't kill him.
Oh, could you imagine how annoying,
yeah,
like monotonous. Let our son out of jail. Let our son out of jail. Would you ever please just let our son out of jail? I'm just back in the door. I'm just in the door. Could I have 5 minutes of peace without you? I'm just after coming back from a full day of trying to prosecute my son. Could I have 5 minutes off before you start fucking nattering on about letting them off?
Have you seen my keys, Blake? I can't find them anywhere. Oh, maybe you left them in the prison to die, since that's where you seem to leave all the things you care about. And you just know there'd be no chance of a ride that month.
Oh, Christ.
Out of the question.
No, headaches all month long. Yeah.
He'd be on the couch, I'll tell you that much. I don't know if they had couches in 1493, but if they did, he was on them.
I was going to say possibly like out in the doghouse, but
did they have houses for dogs then? I don't know.
Irish wolfhounds would have been massive, so you're just in another house. You're in a granny flat, basically.
House is nicer than the apartments we live in now. So like she's stoking the flames of the people that go away. One night the guards had to come out and force to stop a crowd breaking into the prison and destroying the mayor's house in the process, which was attached to the prison. It was all like one big complex, I guess. As well as having to hold off, the will of the people, James had to suffer through various visits from higher-ranking members of the Galway elites. They were all coming and asking for him, listen, just let this one go. Just let it slide this one time. He's getting members of his own family coming. He's getting members from Blake's family, who are obviously like another powerful family. They're all at him. So he's getting the in-laws in as well now. No chance of peace for the man.
At this stage, you really have to question why he doesn't just let him off.
Honestly, I don't know. He's a man of honor, I suppose. His son did just murder a guy.
Yeah, but he's Spanish.
I'm sure that was like his son's defense attorney's opening and probably closing statement. Is it really murder? I mean, if you think about it.
I rest my case.
Standing ovation from the jury.
Just a shrug of the shoulders. You tilt your head to the side and go, no, he's got a point.
I mean, no one was rooting for Manuel in Fawlty Towers, were they? That's all I'll say. So the night before Walter was supposed to be executed, Mayor James Lynch Fitzstevens entered the dungeon where his son was being kept, along with a local priest. Walter looked at his father and asked him straight up, had he anything to hope for? James replied, "No, my son, your life is forfeited to the laws. At sunrise, you must die. I have prayed for your prosperity, but that is at an end. With this world you have done forever. Were any other but your wretched father your judge, I might have dropped a tear over my child's misfortune and solicited his life, even though stained with murder. But you must die. These are the last drops which shall quench the sparks of your nature."
That is not what he said.
Not at all, no. Obviously, this is written like 200 years afterwards. But also, is like, if someone else was your judge, I might have shed a tear over your death. That's pretty cold.
Yeah, yeah. What did he do? Like, what did he do to him? What's he done to his dad?
Yeah, I don't know. He killed his dad's friend, I suppose. I don't know his dad. His dad friend, the Spanish guy.
Yeah, or that Spanish guy could have been. Well, you said you thought he was his age though. Like he's.
Oh,
it's his dad's friend's son.
A lot of trips to Spain, and then on one of these trips he came back with a young man.
Do you think that's his son?
Yeah, maybe.
And he's after killing his own brother.
Possibly, yeah. Now, I will say, zero evidence for this, but I am going to say that Gomez was his illegitimate son. He just killed his own twin brother.
Dennis O'Brien's illegitimate son.
Yes. I don't know why I said twin brother there. They were separated at birth. He put one of them in Spain until he was 21 and then brought him back. Dennis O'Brien was the mother. But, well, with that nice speech, Walter gave up hope of being saved, and James and the priest spent the night praying with him. As dawn broke, the guards came to prep Walter for the execution. James helped them take the binds off of his son's hands and then secured a noose around his son's neck. James took one of Walter's arms while the priest took the other, and they walked Walter up the stairs like this and out of the dungeon and onto the street. But when they got out there into the open air, they were greeted by Walter's mother's family. The Blakes were out in force. She wasn't ready to give up on her son like James was, and she'd called her own family to come and protect the family honour. So they were all there waiting, armed and ready when Walter, the mayor, and the priest came out of the dungeon. So this is it. This is the showdown.
Showdown in Little Galway.
The mayor's men raised their weapons as James cried out to the Blake family, I guess, to obey the laws of the lands and lower their arms. But Blake's family were ready to fight to the death. I don't know, like they're ready to, I wouldn't say go to war, but I mean, this feels like there's no going back from this moment. If you're coming out in arms against the mayor.
Yeah, but also it's a weird one because the whole thing can be saved by not killing the guy that everyone's okay with not killing.
Yeah, but then
And because if you don't do that, you can either let one man live or a load of people are now going to die.
yeah, but that's just how committed this mayor is to justice.
He's done something to his dad. His mother is probably his stepmother, and it's like one of those videos that you see on the internet.
One of those style videos. Well, James grabs hold of his son and he retreats back into the prison, followed by his guards and then followed afterwards by Blake's men. The father and son, they run up a winding stair inside the prison, outrunning the fighting below, until they come to an arched window that's like overlooking the street below them. Mayor James looks down at the madness. His own guards fighting the men-at-arms from his wife's family. There's no going back from this moment. How did they get here, Jason? But James Lynch, determined to see justice done, attaches the noose that was around Walter's neck to an iron staple that's like outside the window. He gives him one last hug and he pushes him out the window to his death.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
That's mad. That's like, but I suppose he would have, like people who have kids probably have to do something similar when they're teaching their kids how to ride a bike. Eventually you take the stabilizers off and you know, you give him a little hug and you're like, oh, go on into the world, and then you're just going to see him fall.
Yeah, it did. Like how it was written was, it said he pushed him out into eternity, which I thought was quite poetic, and similar to the bike thing, I guess. Just pushed him off into eternity, or throwing your kid into the deep end of a pool. Except this was, murder. Well, execution.
Yeah.
But Mayor James thought that this would mean his own death from the crowd below, but they were either so shocked or in awe of what he'd just done, he was allowed to pass through unharmed, and everyone just kind of went home. I guess they're like,
I mean, yeah.
Well, how do you come back from that move? He's just thrown his own son out a window, hung him to death. Like, right, fuck, fair enough.
You could kill him.
Yeah, but like,
that's the only way. It's either you do nothing now or you gotta kill him.
Well, they did nothing. Everyone kind of went home. Apparently, it says that Walter's mother died of grief shortly afterwards. I feel like that was a thing back then where like women specifically would just die of grief. I think it just meant that they like stopped eating.
Or it could have been cancer.
It could have been anything, yeah.
Yeah, it could have been the disease we hadn't figured out what it was yet, and then everyone just goes, it's grief. It's grief.
Oh,
she died of a broken heart. It was like, did she look like she had a 6-inch tuber hanging out of her neck? It was like, she died of a broken heart.
She turned a sort of jaundice yellow and had a horrible cough, all from grief.
That's what happens when you get hit with a serious dose of grief.
Yeah.
You lose all bodily functions.
Yeah, so, and then on the other hand, Mayor James Lynch Fitzstephen lived out the rest of his days in solitude. The mayor's house, where the prison was. So this is from like the Dublin Penny Journal. It was written in 1833. So apparently the mayor's house was still there in 1833 on Lombard Street, which was known as Dead Man's Lane ever since the incident. I don't know if Lombard Street is still there or if it is still known as Dead Man's Lane. But apparently, so the mayor's house / prison, like it was all the same building. It was still there, and there was a skull and crossbones over the door with the motto, "Remember death, vanity of vanity, all is but vanity." Which is,
thought that it should have said, "Never admit to anything ever, even if they catch you."
Yeah, because vanity. It's from Shakespeare and the Bible. It doesn't really apply to this. I mean, he wasn't killed because he was, I suppose it was a little bit vanity. He was annoyed that his fiancée was looking at another man.
She might have wrote him.
It's not really vanity, but he died anyway.
Yeah. Do you think it was? I like the idea that it's his brother.
Yeah, I only come up with that in the middle of that story, but I think that's what happened.
Yeah, because why else would you bother bringing?
Yeah, he must have been really annoyed at him. You're right. Like, I mean, he seems like he had a hard on for justice, but you need something more than that to like go again. If everyone in the town is saying don't kill him, and you still have to like hang him yourself,
and everyone in the town was like don't kill him, you'd probably be like, all right, maybe I won't kill him. But the fact that it is also your son, and everyone's giving you the leeway of like, no, we're not going to say anything. You just go, let him off.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, it's probably because he killed your better son, your Spanish son. He's got a tan, no freckles,
I could have had Gomez.
can make paella.
Yeah. A bea paella. So, I don't know if you guessed it, Jason, but the etymology from this story was the word lynching.
I guess it was in the first minute of the podcast.
You did,
And you
yes.
edited it out.
Yeah, well, we'll save the audio. I might play it here. And we'll all take a moment to bask in your intelligence. It was literally the first thing you said. In fairness, I was like, and a word came from this story, and the first line of the story had a guy with, 3 names in his name, and only one of them is a verb, so.
Yeah.
It could have been called Fitzstevening.
Or just Fitz in general. He'd started convulsing.
So, well, supposedly, this is supposed to be the origin of the term lynching, except that it definitely isn't. It was proposed by a historian called James Hardiman in 1820, but this has been dismissed by most etymologists because lynching wasn't really a term until like the late 1700s in America, which is almost
it's
300 years.
A lynch mob's a very different thing than this mob.
That's the other thing, yeah. But so it's a different thing. It happened 300 years after this event, and it happened in America, which is very far away from Galway.
Basically, there was a man called Lynch that had a group of people.
Yeah. So it's believed that it's believed that some Galway locals invented or exaggerated the tale in order to draw tourism to the area in the 19th century after the term was already becoming popular, which I can see your shocked face. I agree. That is a very macabre thing to be like. They're stringing people up in the deep south. Funny thing about the term lynching. Yeah, came from our little old hometown over here in Galway. That's how people from Galway talk.
Yeah, why don't you come back over and search out your roots? But yeah, well, that's a very depressing way to end that.
Well, it's not over yet, Jason, because that isn't the origin of the term lynching. But it seemed like that the story did happen. There's different accounts, like maybe not to that extent, but there's different accounts from the year 1674. There's Father Francisco de Ora and the Archbishop of Tuam, James Lynch, presumably no relation. They both talk about the story of the former mayor giving out justice. But I suppose it could also be seen as a parable about like a man who did his duty above all distraction, or like he didn't give in to not murdering his son just because it was his boy.
I'm forever doing that, giving in to not murdering my son.
But they reckon that's not where the term came from at all. And in actuality, it seems like the term lynching might have been linked back to that sort of, it's not a folksy story, but a sort of story, it's an interesting story, and it might have been done to sort of, take a little bit of the sting out of the mob execution of random people in the deep south of America.
Yeah, I just really don't see why people would want to use that as like the Irish tourism. Like the, the wild Atlantic way. Tell you what, come on.
We've got boycotting, we've got lynching, we've got it all, baby. Well, I'll tell you, right,
for some very interesting, preloaded YouTube adverts. You just a drone shot going over like the Cliffs of Moher as it passes over. There's a bunch of people doing the lynch mob.
But well, I might explain it in the next paragraph why they like tried to cash in on the tourism aspect of lynching. Because the more likely origin of the phrase is from either Charles or William Lynch, who both lived in Virginia in the 1780s. And they both claim to be the origin of the term lynching. So in 1725, Charles Lynch's dad had left Ireland as an indentured servant to go and work in the British colony of Virginia. Apparently they were called redemptioners at the time. That was the fun term they had. So Lynch's contract was sold off to a plantation owner, and he somehow managed to not only get his freedom, I suppose he worked off his freedom and like worked off his contract, but he also managed to like marry the daughter of the plantation owner, a woman called Sarah Clark. So it says they set up a tobacco plantation of their own. I assume that was mostly with Clark's money, considering he would just stop being a slave. So they set up a tobacco plantation. They have 2 of their own kids called John and Charles. And then the dad dies and the mother converts the family to Quakerism, or like the Quaker religion.
Big fan of the oats.
Big fan of the oats. So as the sort of frontier times boom along and people start moving out, They're, I think, in the Bedford region of Virginia or something. The place starts to take off, and the fact that the Lynch family are already set up there means they become big swinging dicks in the town, which means more land for tobacco and obviously getting into slavery. They become big slave owners. In 1767, Charles becomes Justice of the Peace, which gets him kicked out of the Quakers because apparently they have a rule about, like, you can't give an oath of allegiance to, I don't know, is it to anyone else or, like, yeah, I don't know, maybe your oath is supposed to be to God, but because he takes the position, he gets kicked out of the Quakers.
Your oath's meant to be in the meal, Kevin.
The only oaths we're interested in are these porridge oaths. So he becomes the local militia colonel just in time for the American Revolution in 1775. During that time, him and his gang round up Tories, or British loyalists, and they held informal tribunals to dole out punishment to them, including whipping, property seizure, coerced pledges of allegiance, and conscription into the military.
Most of that stuff isn't as bad as the whipping.
No, definitely I would prefer most of that to the whipping. Getting them to join the military seems like, if you suspect someone's like a British loyalist or a spy, having them join your military...
Let's give him a gun and send him into a place where he'll be surrounded by the people he hates.
Yeah, we got a coerced pledge. We made him promise to swear allegiance to the flag or whatever it was we had in 1775. And I think it'll be fine. So, I don't know if it was during the revolution or after the revolution, he asked Congress to pass a law that would basically exonerate him for any of for all the kangaroo courts he'd held. I think at the time, to like follow due process, you need to arrest someone, send them to the Virginian state capital, have them come back, go through a trial process, a jury of their peers, provide evidence, all these sort of things that people just didn't have time for in a revolution. So he wanted to have a law passed basically to exonerate him for all the illegal stuff he'd done, which he referred to as Lynch's Law in a letter that he wrote in 1782. So the law basically gave him the right to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner. He was Judge Dreading it.
Do you think that most laws then, people get to name them, like, did Newton name Newton's Law, or did somebody else do that for him? Because if that sounds like Lynch named the law himself.
Yeah, he definitely did name it after himself.
Then why did Murphy name Murphy's Law Murphy's Law?
Well, Lynch Law isn't a great law, and it seems like... So the other guy, Captain William Lynch, was another Irish immigrant. I don't think they were related, but he was living in Virginia at the same time and did the same thing. And around 1811, he started trying to claim lynching as his own thing. So not only have you got the boys back in Galway trying to lay claim to the phrase as a tourist trap, you've got two different men in Virginia being like, I was actually the one who started lynching. I'm a bit of a local hero around these here parts. There's no evidence that either of those two men killed anyone, although I would say they almost certainly did.
Yeah, it sounds like it anyway.
It seems like the term meant more vigilante justice at that time of the American Revolution, and it wasn't until after the Civil War in the 1850s. It was after that, after the 1860s, that it became associated with the murder and execution of random black people in the South. So I think that's why they were fighting over ownership, because before that it was a sort of cool yeehaw cowboy justice thing, and it was only afterwards it got muddied up with racism and execution of black humans.
Oh, okay.
But that being said, it does seem like the links to like the Irishness tried to take I think it's sort of like the Confederate flag, where they're like, oh, lynching, it's not about racism, it's a old-timely tradition about mob justice and sticking it to the courts. But for sure, the guy Charles Lynch was definitely a racist. He did own a lot of slaves, which is again a weird thing where like his dad was an indentured servant. He knew what it was like to like work on the plantations for no pay and be fucked over. And then as soon as his like son got into power, he's like, "Yup, good old slavery."
Well, isn't that like there's that book, How the Irish Became White? The fact that we were able to just buy our way out of slavery.
Yeah,
we were indentured slaves instead of actual slaves.
There might be an element of it might even like enhance, because I assume that they didn't consider black people to be human at the time, and that probably pushed that idea further, because you're like, well, that indentured servitude was really fucking horrible, and it's a good thing these black people aren't humans, or else what we're doing would be really fucked up. And it probably pushes that dissonance more, where you're like, well, they couldn't be human because else this entire society is crazy and we are doing something really heinous here.
If they're human, then this world is pretty fucked up and we need to like start having some conversations.
Yeah, exactly. And it's much easier just to be a rich plantation owner who grows tobacco than to answer some hard questions about slavery. So that's pretty much it. That's the fun Irish connections to the term lynching.
Yeah, fun Irish connections to a not so fun term.
No, according to the Tuskegee Institute, roughly 3,442 African Americans were lynched between the years of 1882 and 1968, which is shockingly recent.
Well, according to Jim Core, the number was 0.
And according to Jim Crow, it was a lot.
And according to Jim, it was the better Belushi.
I feel like it's appropriate to seamlessly pivot from the amount of black people killed and murdered in the Deep South to how bad, according to Jim, was as a TV show.
Yeah, they were they're about as funny as each other.
Yeah, you could derive about as much humor out of either of them. So there you go.
Right, okay, well, there's your first episode of the season. Bringing the tone of the whole season.
No, that's the second one.
Down.
We did the Robert Ross one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we're batch recording these for once again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I already know the answers to this question, but would you have let Walter Lynch go, or would you have murdered him?
Well, I think
if he was your son.
Okay, I have a question. What do you think I'd do?
Oh, you'd have let him go straight away.
I wouldn't have had the kid in the first place.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
But in this situation, he's got 2 kids. You definitely would have a secret kid in Spain.
I've been traveling around the world for a couple of years. Like, I'll be bringing over some Vietnamese dignitary's son over to Carlo for a few months. Just going to show him around the ways. Oh, you've murdered my only Vietnamese son.
I made friends with his father back in Vietnam. I said I'd show him around the place. Why does he look exactly like you? No more questions for Jason Jr., please. Or you just call him Jay's son. Jason's son.
Jason's son.
Yeah. That's it. It's good to be back. Good to be doing grim, bleak episodes.
I know,
every
it's
word,
refreshing.
Every verb that's ever entered the English language was actually once an Irish word, and there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fair play, Kev. That was good. I imagine that was a lot of digging for something that the most important part is just the story and has nothing to do with lynch mobs, and you've managed to get an entire episode of lynch mobs.
Yeah, it was similar to the Bridget one you were talking about, where like the story, I was kind of reading through the story and getting different details and cross-reference it, and about halfway through I was like, this is totally made up, so I can pretty much just do whatever I want here.
Yeah, you've artistic license.
I remembered the story from ages ago, wrote out the whole thing, and then went and looked it up somewhere else, and I was like, of course, this etymology has been disproven several times over, as is clearly bullshit. But luckily for us, the proud tradition of lynching was also connected to a different set of Irish people.
Fantastic. Nice way to wrap it up at the end.
Absolutely. Well, lynch mobs are bad.
Yes.
But my friend Bob Lynch is pretty sound.
We will be back next week, sure. Yeah, we'll chat to you next week.
Yes. Happy Tuesday.
Shafter.
Good luck. So here we go. James Lynch Fitzstephen was the mayor of Galway in 1493.
Lynch mob.
And that's the end of the episodes, ladies and gentlemen. Yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm a genius.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to cut that out then, I guess. Or when you said that the fact that the name was going to come out, something was going to come out of the name, and I was like, oh, well, it's definitely Lynch mob.
Yeah, but which one of these? Yeah, was it James Lynch Fitz or Stevens was the thing, but we'll leave it in for the audience, maybe. But
or we can put it at the end, and we'll just do the whole story and then replay. Yeah, so like this is what happened at the beginning of the episode.
This is a bit of podcast magic. We're just going to hide this piece now.